Chair, the meeting is now live.
Thank you. Bore da, good morning. Croeso I gyfarfod o Bwyllgor Democratiaeth Cyngor Powys. Welcome to the Democratic Services Committee meeting this Monday morning. Any apologies? Unrhyw ymddiheuriadau?
Yep, apologies, Chair, from Councillors Peter Lewis and Sarah Williams.
Okay, thank you much. Therefore, minutes of the previous meeting, are we content with those? And therefore can sign them. I can see one nodding. Anybody want to show their approval? Can't see many of you on screen. Just indicate. Yeah. Okay, fine. Thank you, Gareth. Right. Declarations of interest. Any interest to declare? I don't think there are in particular, but it's noted. And therefore, the main item today is the member champion. We have invited 3 colleagues to join with us today who are in current champions roles, Councillor Joy, Councillor Ange and Councillor Matthew, to inform the discussion as much as anything else. Councillor Ange, I know, is with us. I'm not sure, are the other 2 with us yet, Carol?
No, they're not, Chair.
Okay. Well, the purpose of this basically is to review, as the paper says, and to make suggestions and recommendations. Which officer wants to lead us? Steve, do you want to lead us through this paper?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Chair, the report sets out the position of member champion roles on the council. From memory, this goes back about 10 years, and past leaders have made appointments to this role. The roles are set out there in paragraph 2.1 of the report. Not many of these are currently active, but all the roles are being undertaken in one form or another by cabinet members. They may not have champion in their role descriptions, but they are, sorry, that is with the exception of the Armed Forces champion, but they are all been undertaken. Perhaps the only exception to that is the role of the anti-poverty champion, which Councillor Joy Jones is very active on, and you will often hear her speak at council in that capacity. Now, I know the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Fair Powys has said that he is content to meet with Joy on a regular basis so she can provide feedback on the activities she's undertaken. So the question for the Democratic Services Committee this morning really is, do you feel that these roles are required? Is there a risk of duplication with what's been undertaken by the Cabinet, or is it another independent voice representing underrepresented groups within the county? If you do feel there's a role for member champions, should the appointments be undertaken by the leader, as they have been in the past, or should it be by full council? What are the governance arrangements to be? You can see there at page 21 of the report pack, there's a suggested template for member champions to report back. And just by way of comparison, Carol went out to her colleagues across Wales asking what the position was, and you can see there's a wide range. You know, some authorities have a lot of champions, some have none. Some are appointed by council, some or most actually are appointed by the leader. So that's the position as we see it, Leader. Our Chair, be grateful for the committee's thoughts.
Great, thank you much, Steve. Okay, well, and welcome Joy to the meeting. Perhaps what we should do in first instance is to enable our guests to summarise basically what they see as their role, responsibilities, and how it adds value in particular, perhaps the most important, to the work otherwise. And perhaps we then can go to further discussion. Joy, would you like to commence?
Yes, certainly, thank you. My role, I've held it for quite a considerable amount of years. It's well known in the community. I represent the anti-poverty role by attending many local meetings and meetings, at one point meetings all over Powys, but due to when we came into lockdown, things obviously changed as of travelling across across Powys itself. But I still engage with many different groups across Powys, and my role has been one of sharing and taking forward people's views, taking forward the residents' views and people in the community of how it's affecting. I've worked very closely with people throughout the community, different groups. I'm on quite a lot of different meetings and different boards because of my role and my knowledge of the anti-poverty stuff and things that we've got engaged in. I've put on been involved in many events. I've been able to get involved with lots of different organisations that provide hampers and things that I've been able to share out in the community and with people that we wouldn't even normally engage with, because very often it's hard-working people that are actually in poverty and deprivation. People share their experiences with me, and you know, I've used this role as to the best I possibly can. It used to share it with the cabinet, but since we've been under a new cabinet and in just the latter years of the last cabinet, that broke down, because again, I think that was all to do with what we had with the issues of the crisis and the lockdown. But you know, that didn't stop me in what I was doing and how I was working behind the scenes. I get many messages daily from residents and people that have seen what my role is. The role doesn't cost the council. I don't come to the council for these supplies. It's where I work hard and get it through organisations, the community businesses. You know, I've worked quite closely with the RTC, who give me massive hampers and socks and blankets and baby bags, all sorts that we can just give out to the community, and they're just provided, you know, and it's showing that kindness and showing that there are people that care, that there are people that will listen. You know, very often my role can be, I may be called a counsellor with a C, but you'd be very surprised how often my role is actually counsellor with an S. You know, and I'm out there, you know, listening to people that have got needs and just need somebody to turn to and talk to, because they see this role as something and somebody that will stand up and speak on their behalf. So I don't know what else you'd like to know, but I'm very welcome to ask me questions. As I said, I'm on quite a lot of different groups. I do stuff with PABO and health and all sorts of different things, and it's all been around this role. You know what I do, I attend the Newtown Together stuff, and we put on a lot of kindness events and things like that, and make sure that things are given freely to the community, and it's not to those just in poverty, it's given out to all in the community, so there's no discrimination or anybody is being targeted or made to feel that they are in any single box. Is open to everybody, because that I feel very strongly about, that it's inclusive and we include people, and you know, by showing kindness and sharing and helping it, people pass it on, and that again is important. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you, Joy. Ange, do you want to summarise quickly in terms of the disability role, isn't it?
Yeah, lovely. Well, I've been in role, which would be 7 years now as well, like, you know, for quite some time. I was a little uncertain at the start of the new leader. We didn't have the conversation, and I wasn't sure, to be fair, to start with, whether it was my place to still be disability champion, because I am the disability champion. which is a role that I've absolutely loved. I helped to set up various groups in Powys and have gone along to lots of group meetings all over Powys and Accessibility Wales meetings as well. I became part of the Community Health Council because of my role, and now I'm on Llais for the same reason. Well, apart from the fact I really like it as well. Again, like Joy, it's being there for people that sometimes feel they have no voice. I've been on lots of forums with lots of different type of disability. Powys has been very good to me in the fact that I was allowed to join the ALN to find out about accessibility and learning in schools, and to help put together some of the things going forward that the additional learning needs have done for Powys. I actually have to say I really enjoy it. The groups have been very good, even though I wasn't sure whether I was still Disability Champion. I don't think there was any bias or anything of any sort in that way. I think it was just at the start of the new leading groups, there was such a lot of different stuff to set up. I think it was just an oversight that we weren't told whether we were still going to be it or if somebody else was going to take on that role. It wasn't out of any malice or anything like that. I think it was just they were so busy, to be fair. And like you say, now you're coming round to re-looking at them, you know, 2 years later. And I really hope that I will be able to keep this position. Yeah, dealing with lots of people that have problems, lots of phone calls, lots of visits to individuals that need a visit. I was telling Elwyn earlier, I'm helping a lady at the moment that the health board have given a electric wheelchair to that doesn't work in the rain, which is always really good in Powys, isn't it? So that wasn't their best idea. But it's things like that. People, somebody they can come to that not necessarily give advice, but be there to, even if it's hold their hand and say, yeah, we can do this, we'll get through it. And shall we just ring so-and-so and see what they've got to say? Is there anybody else that's had this problem in Wales or in Powys? And look into it in that way. So hopefully that summarises the roll-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ange. Right, members, you've heard from two champions. Do you have any particular questions you want to ask them specifically before perhaps we open the conversation out wider? Councillor Glynn.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. So Councillor Ange and Councillor Joy, you both spoke about the way that you've offered support to individual members of, members within the, residents within the county. I wasn't aware of all the member champion roles. I've only been a councillor for 2 years, but I wasn't aware of all the member champion roles. What I'm wondering is, what is the mechanism by which the public can get in contact with you? How would they know that you're a member champion? And what's that sort of mechanism by which they communicate with you?
Can I come back on that? Okay. I think it's because my role has been existing for quite a long time. Just shut the door because the dog's decided to bark. Sorry. Because my role's been in place quite a long time, I've been in the newspapers a lot as anti-poverty champion. And it's only really under this last sort of council that things have slowed down a little bit with the publicity of it. But prior to that, there was a lot of publicity. It was out there a lot. It was always on the website that who we were. My role was I did have a conversation with the leader, and the leader did give me back my role at the beginning of the new term. So that was something that I did do, and I've been working quite closely on various little bits and pieces with Matthew, who's also got a role under the poverty as his portfolio holder now with it. but it is a different sort of role. And you know, so yeah, the public do know. Okay, there will be some out there that don't, and you know, that perhaps is what the council needs to make it more clear. But the champion roles were spoken about and were used, and like I said, we used to report back to cabinet. So it was there and minuted, and you know, in the beginning, the champion roles were held and used a lot by the cabinet and by, you know, other councils, and other councils would invite you to their wards if there was something that they felt was relevant. So how do people know? They do, but yes, there will be some people out there that probably don't. But isn't that the same as us being councillors? Not everybody knows that you're a councillor, and until, you know, you're introduced.
Okay, thank you. We've got Councillor Gareth and then Councillor Peter.
Yeah, mine's really a follow-up point to the point that Councillor Glynn's just made, Chair. I've had a quick look on the Powys website this morning, just searched for member champion, can't find anything. So, you know, publicity, if we're going to have this role, we need to make sure people in the community know that they exist and their contact details.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd probably similar to Councillor Gareth and Councillor Glynn there. I'd sort of echo those comments, and I think as well, apart from, I guess, Councillor Joy, who I know is very active and passionate about her role, as is Councillor Ange from what we've heard this morning, I've sort of not really had any interaction with any of the member champions over the last 2 years since I've been elected, but that may echo the sentiments that Councillor Joy was saying. I think just what I've got in my mind, I'm not sure if it's for now or later in the debate, Chair, but it's how do the champions, if you like, represent me as a councillor? How do they work with me in my area and across Powys? Because in a way, all of the roles that are there as champions, I sort of see that they are roles for every one of us as a councillor. So I think it's not necessarily just for one individual, and we should all be standing up and making these points. So I just want to understand how we interact with that champion, if that makes sense.
I think perhaps we'll come back to that, because that's an important point, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Clare.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think for me, being a fairly new councillor here, but having worked in very many local authorities, so I'm very well aware of member champions, what positives they can bring. I think it's more about so going back to what Councillor Peter Lewington said about all councillors should be doing that community role. I completely agree. I think the members champions is more about influencing policy and strategy across the council and champion that particular interest group, and making sure that effectively is almost like a lobbying role to a certain extent, in terms of you know, so when the council are looking at different plans and projects, and like the LDP, for example, from a planning point of view, or the economic development strategies, it's about championing the needs of those underrepresented groups in those areas, and I think there definitely is a value in those member champions role from that point of view, but I'm also conscious that to avoid duplication, we always need to be aware of how the current cabinet is structured around themes, and to see how the members champions can fit with that, because obviously some of the cabinet roles sort of cover more than one of the list from the previous council terms in paragraph 2.1. So we probably need to look at that, and to sort of see how we can sort of make sure that there are no gaps, and that all groups are represented equally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Claire. That's the very point that I was going to raise, really, because reading the reports and the responses of our champions, it's clear to me that for the last 2 years they've been left high and dry. There seems to be very little consultation, very little guidance from the cabinet of whether they actually want these people in place, or whether they intend it to continue or take it over as cabinet individuals, as seems to be being mentioned in some of the areas of this report. So I just feel that this is something that cabinet has to make, a proper decision on going forward, and say, we want this to continue or we don't want it to continue. Because I don't suppose Councillor Ange and Councillor Joy have any kind of job description for this role that's been provided to them. So they don't have any guidance. What I would say about both Joy and Ange is, they do challenge situations in council meetings on a regular basis when poverty and disability matters are raised. So the two members that are with us today carry out this role properly. It's difficult for them, I'm sure, to carry it out Powys wide, and a lot of the work that they do that we don't see, is being done on a local basis. But we need to make it clear as a council, really, what their roles are, how they can be contacted, and how they can challenge and also represent we as councillors at full council meetings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Glynn.
I'd just like to respond to Councillor Graham, if I may. I think it would be entirely unfair to say that it's come about in the last 2 years. Indeed, I remember reading in the County Times a newspaper article from the last council, the last time that this was debated at Democratic Services Committee. Indeed, I think you were still chair at that time, Councillor Elwyn. And I think there was a similar confusion at the time about the role of member champions and what role they were meant to fulfil. And so to try and pin this on the last 2 years, I think is not entirely fair, Councillor Graham.
Well, I'll just come back on that. It actually says that, our two representatives here actually say that in their responses in the report.
Okay.
We did hear from Steve that Councillor Dorrance has been willing to meet with Councillor.
Yeah.
So, that's equally true, isn't it? So.
Okay, well, today we need to try and think how we move forward for the next couple of years. Councillor Ange, Councillor Joy, then we will perhaps focus then specifically on some of these questions. Ange.
Well, for me, we don't have any officers. We don't have any funding. So we do this out of a love for the job and for the people of Powys, really. What I was going to say was that we go to things that everybody can't go to. People have something, like Accessibility Powys, the meeting I'm going to next Monday. They let me go whether I was in role or not, to be totally truthful, because I wasn't 100% certain. I did ask them if they were still prepared to have me at the meetings, and they said, yes, please, because you've been helpful in the past. But not all of us can go. There's nearly 70 of us. We can't all go to that meeting every month. We can't all go to the All Wales meetings. We can't go to the all ones in our individual towns. I know I've met with the Brecon group. I've met with the Welsh Pill group, but we're all busy people, aren't we? Let's be totally truthful. We all haven't got time to go to everything. And I think we're there as a representative to say that everybody in council does care. Everybody in council wants to hear your opinion. Everybody in council wants to hear, but we just can't all be here. It's very similar, say, to the chair's role, whereas all 70 of us can't go to open every race that's on or every public building. I think that is as much part of the role is to let everybody know that every member of council is bothered, every member of council does care, and every member of council will look at this but can't actually come to this particular thing every month or whatever. So that was what I was going to say, really. It isn't to try and take anything from everybody else. It was put there to add to everybody else's. Okay.
Thank you, Ange. Councillor Joy.
Thank you. I would totally agree with everything that Ange said there. that we go to represent other councillors to because as Ange said, not everybody can attend all these things. Not everybody has an interest in these things. Not everybody spends hours and hours and hours collecting things and going out and sharing it with others. And you know, it might be knowledge, it might be goods, it might be various different things, but people obviously do know our roles, because as I said, you know, groups will get in touch with us and ask us to go to these meetings and things. It used to be on the website. Our champion roles were there and contact details, and you know, and it's very sad that if it's no longer there, because you know that was part of it. It was partly there, you know, and in many a meeting, when I speak out and I say as the anti-poverty champion. So you know, this is something that has gone on for a long time, not costing the council money, not taking masses of officer time. Occasionally ask advice, because don't we ask advice as councillors anyway to make sure we're doing something correctly? When the roles were first put in place, we were given actual officers to work with us, and Greg, who is well known to the council, actually became part of Powys County Council because he was the officer that was brought in at the time to work with on the anti-poverty side of it. I do answer to Matthew, and I've been a part of the two conferences that have now been held in Powys to work around Wales. Basically, it's people, you know, it's different organisations and things from around Wales. So it's learning, it's finding skills, it's learning different ways that we as a council can work to help to prevent and combat the poverty and deprivation there is. And my ward is one of the highest wards in Wales. It's up on the top, in the top 10 of deprivation and poverty. So I'm working within the ward and the skills that there are. I'm very sorry, Chair, to take so long. I just needed to try and explain. I love this role and I find it very important.
We understand the passion. Thank you, Joy. And thank you both of you for attending and for helping to inform the conversation discussion today. In relation to the paper we have in front of us, we have recommendation, first of all, to consider whether the member champion roles are required. I think that's a fundamental question. And of course, if so, we need to define perhaps what that means and whether we need other roles as some other authorities, not all, but there's a very wide-ranging perception and approach by other authorities in relation to member champions. I must confess, as myself, as one who was a one member champion in the previous administration, what I'm trying to get my head around it all is what is the added value and what is the differential over and above what somebody would be doing anyway. And I think that's the crux where I'm coming from. And to be honest, I have some difficulty in perhaps getting clear thoughts on it. But anyway, Councillor David.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think I was the one that wanted this item to come to Democratic Services, because to me, the whole way of appointing people to the member champion role is totally undemocratic. But I noticed that, you know, similar arrangements are with other authorities as well. But for a member champion to be appointed just by the leader, I don't think is right. I don't think it's right that, you know, after a council term, that the people automatically move forward to the following term. I've got nothing against the people who are doing it, but I think, you know, these positions not open to members, it's just been, you know, approached. And I don't think that is the right way forward. It is totally undemocratic. I equally don't think that it is the role of a cabinet member to be a member champion. I think that is not right either, because you did say you weren't sure what your role is. My view is that if you're a member champion, you work with the portfolio holder of what is responsible for that area that you are covering, so that you can challenge them, you can put views across. And therefore, I am totally opposed to a cabinet member being a member champion, because I don't think that is right. They need, it is another means of those responsible for various areas are challenged on whether or not council policy fits the bill for that area. So, that's why I brought it, because I just couldn't believe the procedure that is followed to appoint people. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. And I think, people in the new council should be given opportunities. Number didn't even know they existed this morning, and I just don't think it's right. So those were my thoughts anyway on it. Is member champions challenge cabinet members, and therefore how can cabinet members be member champion? It doesn't work.
Yeah. So you've got a specific issue there we need to bear in mind, don't we? Councillor Clare. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just touching on a bit of what Councillor Davids just said, really. I think I agree with him on some bits. I disagree with him on others. I think I certainly agree that there shouldn't be an automatic rollover from previous administrations. I think it's something that needs to be looked at, ideally with each council term. And obviously we're 2 years into the current one, but it doesn't look like it was ever looked at the start. So we probably do need to do that now. I also agree that I don't think you should be marking your own homework. So I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for a cabinet portfolio holder to also be a members champion. I do think it is for the leader to choose, because I think ultimately a leader has to structure their administration in a way that reflects their priorities. But the members champion is obviously to represent the views of minority groups, whichever they may be. And I think so long as the application process is open to all members as to who would like to fill that role, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's where the democracy, any perceived democracy deficit that Councillor David thinks could be filled, because it would be open to all members to apply for. But ultimately, I think it would be for the leader to structure that. And I think it's making sure that we cover all the depth and breadth of potentially disadvantaged groups. I wouldn't want a list of 30 member champions. I think that dilutes dilutes the concept. I think it's about targeting those key groups in society whose voices need to be heard across the policy, whatever policy and strategy that the council is preparing. So I don't see it as being primarily about going to local community events. I do see it more about representing those groups across Powys as a whole in the decisions and the policies that the council are preparing to make sure that those groups are represented well and not disadvantaged. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Joy, I see your hand is up. Have you got something specific you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out once again that it wasn't an automatic rollover. I did have to go through the leader. The leader did appoint me, and also I'm absolutely agree with Claire. It's not about going to events. That's not what I do. Okay. It is representing and being parts of groups, the events of things I put on, not going to represent them. I just wanted to make it clear.
Thanks. Can we come back, I think, to Councillor Peter Lewington raised an important issue previously. Can we, Peter, do you want to revisit that?
Yes, please, Chair. Yeah, it was. I think a couple, including yourself, other councillors, have alluded to it. It's I'm struggling again in my mind with my concept of this being a role for everyone to actually do this, but then I've now got a members champion, and how do I interact with that member's champion, and what is their role supposed to be? And I think that's just where a lot of my confusion is around whether the role is actually needed, when I think it's everyone's role in the first place, if that makes sense.
I think, yes, we're in a very similar mindset, I think, Councillor Peter. Councillor Danny.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm sort of heading down the lines of with yourself and Councillor Pete Lewington. I've only been a councillor for 2 years. I had heard of the term, what I don't know, I can't remember what they're called now, sorry. Community, no, they're not community. Anyway, yeah, I had heard of the term, but I never really knew what they were. But I find that I already do this sort of role, really. Someone comes to me with an issue. We've got people, specialists within the council that we take this issue to, and we follow up whether this issue's dealt with, or check how it's been dealt with, and we move forward like that. And if it's not dealt with how the resident or we like, we carry on and follow it up some more until it's resolved. But I can see a benefit to it from the other side, that us as members could approach a councillor that's in that field and say, look, we've got this issue, can you deal with it? And we'll check on it from there. But I feel that we already do that with existing officers anyway. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Danny. Councillor Clare.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, sorry to maybe repeat myself, but I think we need to draw a distinction here between casework of individual needs of vulnerable groups in our communities to somebody champion the views of an underrepresented group as a whole. I think that's the distinction. Going back to what Councillor Ange said, we can't all be everywhere. We've only got a number of hours in the working day, in the working week. So it's about having somebody who across the board is an advocate and representing the views of that group, whether that group be a disability group, or whether it be a young person's, children, young adults, or whether it be anti-poverty, or whether it be armed forces. What the role is to advocate for that section of society. So as an individual councillor, yes, you would be representing all of those people on an ad hoc individual basis as and when those needs presented themselves to you. But this is what we're talking about as a member champion is different. It's not reacting to, I've got somebody in my community with a special need that we need to sort out. That is your role as a ward councillor. What we're talking about is having somebody nominated to advocate for that section of society as a whole across the council and influence policies and strategy at the very top level. So that does mean working and holding the cabinet and the executive to account to make sure that those needs and views of those underrepresented groups are reflected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I totally understand what Councillor Clare's just said there, and that just helps explain it a bit more, but also confuses it a bit more for us because, or for me, sorry, because I guess if it's there to influence policy, where is my input to that member's champion to get my point across about how I think that policy should be? If that makes sense. So again, I'm back to the bit is how does the member champion represent the 67 other councillors and get all their views as well as the views of the particular group that they're championing, into that debate about the policy?
Whilst also bearing in mind that these champions have no resources, no backup, or in any way or form. Councillor Glynn.
Oh gosh, sorry, I've just taken my hand down, Chair. But I suppose the point I was going to make, reading between what Councillor Clare is saying, I suppose you're essentially arguing that it sits somewhere between our role doing casework and between scrutiny. Is that the sort of grey area that you think it sits in, Councillor Clare?
Yeah, I just think it's if you're going to have them, that is what they do, and that's what they do in other authorities. Is they champion and advocate for that section of society that they represent. So they would influence. They would make sure that they sit on the relevant scrutiny committees to get those points across, get that view across. They would be lobbying, whichever portfolio holder closely aligned with whatever whoever they represent. Sometimes that's more than one portfolio if it crosses over different issues. But my point is that their focus is the group they represent. It's not other councillors, and it's not. It's being the voice, the champion for that whichever group they represent.
So, if we consider today's paper, perhaps the fundamental first question is whether the roles actually needed. Do we need member champion roles in Powys? Yeah, we can't do anything but the members champion title, unfortunately, Councillor Pete, but it's beyond our control. Clive.
Chair, I've just been checking in the background. Once you consider that members have had sufficient time to debate this matter, Steve and Carol have arranged a series of electronic votes if you want to go down that route, Councillor.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Well, fundamental question is, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, I'll start the debate, Chair. I think we should continue with member champions, but I also think we should have a good thought about what roles we want them to take on and how they're applied. And I would actually say there ought to be a link to either a cabinet member or a key officer around each of the areas. For example, if I was in charge of disability like Angie's, I would expect Ange to have a link into an officer in children's, adults, and in education. So I think they could. It's like the role I did with the leisure service. I was a lead member for leisure services review, and that was like a scrutiny. But we were halfway through the review before I really realised what I was meant to do. So there needs to be quite a good description of what the role is. But I would say we should have them, but keep them to a small number. I think that the one person before I became a member, the one person I knew that had a specific role in the community was Councillor Joy. I knew if there was a anti-poverty issue, then Joy was the person to go to.
Question is, you use the term small number. Please define small number. Are we talking about keeping the status quo? Are you talking about half a dozen?
I would say around 6 personally. And I think some of the areas could be linked. Sorry, it's a dog barking.
And then the question comes then is who decides those roles? And how do we keep it as bureaucratic free as possible? Because you don't want to, what the interaction between if you have talking about link officers and things, how does that relate then to the wider scrutiny role? Those are sort of questions, I think, isn't it? Councillor Glynn.
Do you know, and it was on that very point that I wanted to pick up on, actually. If you're talking about allocating officer time, particularly senior officer time, we're actually talking about allocating a fair bit of money, actually, depending on how much officer time the member champions expect to take up. And I suppose then the question comes, do we think the value added by having member champions is worth that sort of wider cost to the authority and wider cost in terms of the time that it's going to take up of officers?
Thank you. So, Gareth, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I'm not talking having an allocation of hours per week. I'm talking perhaps half an hour a month to have that chat with a senior officer, something that you do over a cup of coffee. It's what I would expect my role is as a councillor anyway. If I've got an issue, I go to the relevant office. It's almost having somebody. Sorry, it's like almost having somebody to coordinate. So this dog is driving me nuts this morning. Having somebody to coordinate the thoughts of members. If I wanted to discuss an action on anti-poverty, I go to Joy to have that advice. There's several things that we could do, I think.
Okay. Councillor Clare.
Thanks, Chair. I don't think it necessarily needs to be at a financial cost to the council. This is all about structure and governance at the end of the day. And I think ultimately, if you've got an individual member who's really passionate about a particular area of underrepresentation, maybe because they themselves are part of that, or they have family members or friends who are, I think that is where the champion comes from. It's people who have that lived experience and invested interest in making sure that that representation is there across the council and the decisions and the policies that the councils are making. So, for example, when you're looking at budget setting, for example, you would be expecting the champion for children and young people to be making sure that none of the children's play areas, for example, were going to be closed and they're going to be protected. Similarly, you then have people from the disability groups who may be making sure that making sure that when new equipment goes in, it's of appropriate so that it meets the needs of those children with disabilities, for example. So it's almost cost neutral in that you would just be being that advocate, and you'd be using using your member role to influence those and to hold to feet to the fire the portfolio holders who cover your area, and for a lot of people that will be more than one person. It crosses boundaries.
Okay. Councillor David.
Sorry, Chair. Just very quickly on resources. I mean, there could very well be travelling expenses involved, so we can't say that there is no cost to the authority on it if member champions are going around various areas. That's the only thing I'd like to point out on that.
Yeah, and officers' time, it does cost money also, and we all know how that is. It is a factor in that sense. Councillor Gareth, see.
Yeah, we also need to take about the effectiveness of these roles and what the efficiency that can be gained or the savings that can be gained from their involvement in that process. You know, once you've got a champion with the understanding and knowledge, they could add it, pardon my language, a hell of a lot of improvement, efficiency. There's another process coming in there. It's another link with groups that they're dealing with. You know, for example, I don't know whether you call I'm the council's rep on the local access forum, and you'll often hear me speak in meetings around the need to enhance the bridleways, the footpaths, etc. It's how you actually encompass that in.
But that's an important point. You're not a champion, yet you do that role.
Yeah, but
so question is
I'm
that
officially appointed into that role. So I would say, okay, I'm not a champion by name, but I think I am championing that area for the authority. But you know, okay, I'm a numbers person, but I see these champions being able to influence actions and things like that, and actually make more efficiencies. There may be a small cost to it, but there may be a hell of a lot more savings gained from actually having that role if it's done properly.
Okay. Any other points? If not, I think we need to answer the fundamental question, basically, whether member champion roles are required. Yes or no, I think it comes down to that. I think perhaps the only way to resolve that is to have a vote on it. And then everything else will come out of that, one way or the other.
Carol, can you please put the vote in the chat, please?
Well, there we are. There's a voting slip in the chat at this moment in time. Thank you.
Sorry, I know it is in the papers. Can we clarify what question 1 is? Because it just says 4 against and abstain online. Oh, yes. Sorry, it's at the top.
Yeah.
Mine won't open.
Was that Danny? Sorry.
Yeah, mine won't open. It tells me I'm not connected to the internet, but I must be because I'm on this.
It may be your VPN, Councillor Danny. If you check your VPN. Carol, can you indicate if all members apart from Councillor Danny, if they've been able to vote? Can you tell us, please?
I've had 7 votes, Chair, Clive, sorry. So there's 8 members in the meeting, and I've had 7. I've got 8
Okay.
now.
Okay. It was VPN, was it? Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've had 4 against, 4 for the member champions role continuing, and 4 against, and no abstentions.
Well, I am not convinced of the roles, to be honest with you, of the added value. I can see in an ideal world of the what Councillor Clare is emphasising, but I can't see in practice it working. And that is why I think at this time I can't support, so I will be voting against.
So then that makes that, with the chair's
casting vote,
it's 4 members champions continuing, 5 against member champions continuing, and no abstentions.
Okay, yeah, that clarifies that situation. And therefore, we go on to the next item. Constitution again, Clive.
Chair, bear with me a second when I get my papers together.
No problem. Yes, well, that.
Chair, you'll see the report on this matter is in the supplementary paper. It is an issue which we keep addressing in terms of updating the constitution as and when things change nationally. You'll see from page 1 of the report that there is a new requirement of subscribing to the DBS service, a new requirement of licensed drivers in compliance with guidance issued by Welsh Government and the Department of Transport for Transport. Chair, you'll see that in this regard, there's an amendment which is proposed with regard to section 13 of the Constitution, and you'll see from the paper that the bits in red have been added to deal with this new requirement. Chair, I've taken the view that as this is a requirement of change of law, that this is a minor amendment, doesn't need to trouble council, and therefore making this made the amendment myself. And in accordance with the Constitution, I've reported that amendment to DSC.
Thank you much. Any questions in particular? No.
Councillor Clare has got a hand up, Chair.
Councillor Clare, and then Councillor Gareth.
Thanks, Chair. A question for Clive, really. I understand the requirement to subscribe to the new DBS update service. So am I right in saying all supply a new DBS to the authority is 6 months? So people would have to do one or the other, either have the automated update, or if they didn't subscribe to the automated, then every 6 months they'd have to demonstrate an up-to-date DBS. Is that am I understanding that right?
Chair, that's right. But this is requirement for Hackney carriage drivers. These are taxi drivers. This is a new requirement for them.
Okay, thank you. I just thought every 6 months might be a bit onerous for paperwork, but if it's an either or situation, then I don't see why they can't do that. That's fine.
Councillor Gareth's got a hand up as well, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, mine's a similar point to Councillor Clare. Is that going to apply then to all officers and members who've got DBSs as well?
No, it doesn't apply to everybody. This is a specific requirement for taxi license drivers.
Do we know why it's just for them then? Why it's not been applied to other groups?
I think that in terms of safeguarding for members of the public who use taxis, in essence, this is a new requirement in relation to them, because I think there have been a number of incidents involving this particular group, Councillor Gareth, and therefore we will continue for everybody else on a 3-year basis. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you much. Any other issues, Clive, in relation to Constitution?
No, thank you, Chair. I just report that to DSC as required.
Thank you much. Okay, item 6, review the 2020 induction programme and information.
Chair, I think, and I was trying to get hold of Carol before the meeting. So if I suspect that this is the requirement to set up a working group to look at this and to consider the impact and the relevance which the new induction program had, so that we can do that. Carol, is that am I right?
Yes, Clive. Yeah, it's you know, members have been in post now for a period of time, and it's rather than leaving it until closer to 2027 when we're preparing for that new council, it's actually trying to capture members have been in position now for 2 years. Are there things that they've gathered over the 2 years that might have been better to have been told of when they first started? Yeah. So it's about reviewing the information that they were given, and also the whole induction program. So we, you know, it's still relatively fresh in people's minds. Yeah.
So, Chair, I suspect that the request is for members to agree a small working group, perhaps 3 or 4, and to report back to DSC once that working group has completed its work.
That's correct.
Thank you. It makes sense to me, and I see we have some new members in the committee today, which obviously have a valuable contribution to make to this. Do we have any volunteers or suggestions of names to participate? Please. Councillor Glynn.
Yeah, happy to put myself forward, particularly because in my professional life, I work with council groups across England and Wales. Good. So I've got a bit of a broader understanding of how other councils do this as well.
Good, well done. Anybody else? Claire, do you want to participate?
Yeah, I'm happy to be involved in that. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And Gareth, I see your name hand up.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Great stuff. Okay. Well, I'm sure we'll leave it in your capable hands.
Okay, Chair, are you going to participate in this on yourself? Otherwise, we just got the 3 that we just volunteered.
More than happy to help out.
Thank you, Chair. Just making sure that we knew who the membership was. Thank you ever so much, members.
Great. Thank you much. Okay, forward work program. Anything in particular? Anybody wants to flag up there? No. If not, can I therefore thank everybody for their attendance today and for the meeting? And
Chair, could I just interrupt? Yes. Or Steve, sorry, Steve, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Carol. Sorry, Chair. I should have said when you took the vote on the member champion role, that will be a recommendation now to council.
Yes, it will be a recommendation. Yes, and of course, then people can, the wider council, as ever, can come to whatever conclusion they can listen or not, in essence. Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn, and on that point, therefore, we shall leave it till full council and see you at the next meeting. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye all.
Bye.
So we're going to recommend to discontinue.